Picture a child standing in a crowded room, quietly tugging at their parent's sleeve. They're not throwing a tantrum or demanding anything. They're just waiting for the smallest glance, the tiniest acknowledgement that they exist. Maybe you've seen this child at a playground, in a classroom, or perhaps you were that child. On the surface, nothing dramatic is happening, but inside that young mind, something devastating is taking root. There's a painful truth about children who grow up ignored. They often become adults who struggle to believe they deserve attention at all. They walk into rooms feeling like they must shrink. They enter relationships wondering if they're too much. They succeed at something, but instead of celebrating, they wait for it to be overlooked, as if invisibility is their natural state. This isn't because they lack talent or worth. It's because the foundation of their sense of self was built in silence. Psychologists call this an internalized neglect schema. Over time, the brain actually wires itself to expect neglect, to anticipate dismissal, to assume that needs are a burden. A child who is ignored enough times eventually learns not to ask. They convince themselves that wanting love, affection, or understanding is somehow wrong. Here's what makes this so insidious. Childhood neglect doesn't always look like abuse. It doesn't always look like cruelty. Sometimes it's simply absence. The unanswered questions, the lack of eye contact, the forgotten birthday, the parent too busy, too tired, too distracted to notice. But the psychology of the ignored child runs deep, shaping how they see themselves, how they view the world, and how they build relationships decades later. From a psychological perspective, acknowledgement isn't just about feeling good, it's about survival. Research in developmental psychology shows that children need three core things to thrive: safety, stimulation, and connection. Connection, being seen, heard, and valued, is what shapes a child's sense of identity most directly. John Bowlby, the founder of attachment theory, argued that secure attachment creates a foundation of trust that becomes the blueprint for all future relationships. But if a child is ignored, if their needs are met with silence or inconsistency, they internalize a dangerous belief. Maybe I don't deserve love. Maybe I'm not important. Studies in neuroscience show that when a child's attempts at connection are repeatedly ignored, their brain interprets it as a threat. The stress response activates. Cortisol floods the body. Over time, this rewires their nervous system to expect rejection. Their baseline becomes anxiety. Their emotional regulation becomes fragile. And yet, from the outside, they might just look like a quiet kid. Imagine being 8 years old and running home from school with a drawing you're proud of. You hold it up to show your parent, but they're busy on the phone. You try again at dinner, but the conversation passes you by. Eventually, you put the drawing away and never mention it again. Now imagine this happening not once but dozens, even hundreds of times over childhood. The child learns that excitement, pride, even joy are things best kept to themselves. Years later, that same person struggles to celebrate their own successes, dismissing them as unimportant. The ignored child becomes the adult who ignores themselves. A 2019 study in the Journal of Child Psychology and Psychiatry found that emotional neglect in childhood is strongly correlated with chronic feelings of loneliness in adulthood, regardless of social environment. Even if that adult has friends, family, or a partner, a quiet emptiness lingers inside. Most parents who ignore their children don't do so out of cruelty. Often it's stress, economic hardship, mental health struggles, or simply not understanding how critical acknowledgement is. But intention doesn't erase impact. To the child, the absence feels the same, regardless of why it happens. Ignored children develop coping mechanisms that can even look like strengths. Some become fiercely independent, others become high achievers, striving to finally earn the acknowledgement they crave. Some become peacekeepers, avoiding conflict to keep a fragile sense of connection alive. But beneath these strengths is exhaustion. The independent child grows into an adult who struggles to trust others. The high achiever becomes the perfectionist, never satisfied. The peacekeeper becomes the people pleaser, unable to say no. In romantic relationships, the patterns become even more profound. Some adults who were ignored as children become desperate for affection, clinging tightly to anyone who shows them attention. Others keep emotional distance because closeness feels dangerous. Both reactions come from the same root: the fear that love will disappear, the expectation that their needs will not be met. And yet here's the paradox. The ignored child often becomes one of the most empathetic adults you'll ever meet. They know the sting of being unseen. They develop a heightened sensitivity to the emotions of others. Studies show that neglected children often develop strong observational skills, learning to read faces, tones of voice, and small shifts in mood because their survival depended on it. That hyper-awareness can become a gift in adulthood, but it carries a heavy cost. They tune into everyone else while tuning out themselves. But here's where something remarkable happens. Even when a child grows up ignored, they still carry a quiet hope. That's why so many ignored children as adults seek healing. They read books about psychology. They dive into self-discovery. They go to therapy. They are not content to live in the silence they were raised in. They want to break it. Healing is possible. Neuroscience shows us that the brain is not fixed. It adapts, changes, and rewires. Every time they speak up and are heard, the brain registers safety. Every time they set a boundary and it's respected, the nervous system learns trust. Every moment of healthy connection becomes like a drop of water wearing away the stone of old wounds. Healing doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like finally telling a friend, "I need you to listen to me right now." Sometimes it's daring to say, "I feel hurt," instead of swallowing the pain. Sometimes it's sitting alone and whispering to yourself, "My feelings matter, even if no one taught me that before." So if you were that child, if you ever sat in your room waiting for someone to notice you, if you ever felt like your emotions were too heavy for anyone to carry, if you ever wondered whether your presence mattered, let me say this to you now. It mattered then, and it matters now. You matter now. Healing is not about erasing the past. It's about giving yourself the love you deserved all along. It's about learning to see yourself not through the eyes of neglect, but through the eyes of compassion. It's about realizing that being ignored shaped you, but it does not define you. The child who was ignored often becomes the adult who refuses to ignore others. And in that choice, imperfect, messy, brave, they discover something profound. They were never truly invisible. They were simply waiting to be seen. If this resonates with you, I want you to do something right now. Take a moment and acknowledge one feeling you've been pushing down. Say it out loud, even if you're alone. Write it down. Share it with someone you trust. Break the silence, even just a little. Because your voice matters, your story matters, and you deserve to be heard.